So we're looking at pin tucks or tucks. So when they're small, they're called pin tucks. So I'm going to show you how to make the small pin tucks using a cord. And then you're going to do a quarter, half inch, and an inch pin tucks or tucks. When your tucks are nestled beside each other, they're called blind tucks. When they're spaced out like this, they're spaced tucks. And when they're really tiny, they're called pin tucks. You can use them for lots of different things. Decoration, you see a lot of these pin tucks on blouses. It can be used to shape. They don't have to all be all straight down. You can graduate them, stop them part way and graduate them so it can shape around a bust area and give you some room for the bust, so it can be fitted at the top with the pin tucks, and then shaping around your bust, it releases the fabric so it can accommodate your bust size. So lots of different ways you can use it. You can use it also for decoration on skirts or petticoats. You can put it tucks around the bottom and decorate it, and it's a good idea for theatre. You got petticoats, they're plain, you can throw a few tucks and it's a quick alteration. Say you need it to be longer for somebody, you can just drop one of the tucks, open it up and it drops down. So if you drop down the half inch one, you got an extra inch. If you drop down the 1 inch one, you got 2 inches. So you could make a series of them. So here, like quarter, half inch, and an inch. I would do from the smaller to the bigger, going to the bottom. But that could be a decoration, and then, oh, I need another inch. It's an inch too short. Just unpick one, drop it down. So quick way for alterations as well. Yeah. So we're gonna go through. I'm gonna go through creating a pin tuck first. So when you're making a pin tuck, get yourself a bit of cord. This is the easiest way that I've found to do it. Get yourself a cord, so depending how big you want it, this is about 3mm cord. You could use 2. You could use less if you wanted. And put a crease on your fabric on the straighter grain. And then pop your cord in between. So you've made a crease. Pop your cord in between. And then you're going to come along with your zipper foot and machine. And this is it, machined with the cord in it. And then you pull that out, which is this one, and press it, and you've got a perfect even pin tuck. So you can make a series of them. You need to figure out your spacing that you want, which I'll explain in the next 1/4 inch one that we're doing. So for your sample, I would like you to make 2 of them, and on the second one leave your cord in so you can see the process of doing it. Yep, and for your untucks that we're doing, you can do 1 of each on your sample. Unless you can do more if you want, you can do a whole set of each. That's your choice. So we're looking at, these are 1/4 inch pin tucks. And a pin tuck is fabric pinched up and sewn and then laid down and ironed to one side. You see it in, you get blouses decorated like that. You see it in a lot of children clothing. This is one's partially made. So on the yoke, it's got a little series of pin tucks. So these 3 are close together and these 3 are spaced. So you have to figure out the spacing. So when you do that, I've drawn the lines here for a visual. You wouldn't normally draw the lines because you don't want to see all the lines all over your bodice, your yoke of your fabric. For a 1/4 inch pin tuck, we want a space of a 1/2 inch. And then what you do is you fold that in the middle, you pinch it up, and you sew those 2 lines together. So if you look here, these have been done, pre-done. So if you do 1 and do 2 and then figure out your spacing, and then if you measure from the fold of the one to the fold of the next one, which in this case is 19 millimeters. So I'm measuring from here to here, there to there. So it's 19 millimeters. So I'll turn that over and I'm measuring from that to here. It's 19 millimeters. And then I've done it again, 19 millimeters. And if you mark your points, so you measured it, I've just done a little dot there and a little dot here. Again, dot, dot. This is soluble, so it'll just disappear as soon as you wet it. And then I've making sure my grain's straight. I've folded it and I give it a little press, and then I folded the next one on the dots and give them a little press. So if you work a few ahead of yourself each time, so you have to be careful. If you do too many ahead, sometimes your line will start going a bit ski-whiff, so keep double checking. So now what I would do, I would come with my sewing machine, I'd pick this up, turn it in, and I want this 1/4 inch. I've pre-measured this. I know that my little groove in my foot here is my 1/4 inch to the edge here. So if I butt up the side of my foot against my stitch line, and my groove is where my needle comes down, I've measured that as a 1/4 inch. So I've already pre-measured that. I figured it out before, prior to. So just make sure, however deep you want your pin tuck to be, you will use a little gauge. So my gauge for this is that. If I want to go to 1 inch, on your plate on the sewing machine, you have lines with there's a series of lines beside it, so measure them and use them as a guide. If you want to make a deeper one, you can measure out on your machine and put a bit of painter's tape is good because it's low tack. And then once you've done that, you press them to one side. It's a little trick is when you're doing a load of them. If you stitch down one, stitch back up the other and alternate it. And that, so by alternating it, it counteracts the curve that happens sometimes when you do a load. So just a little trick. You can try that if you've got a lot to do. Another way, you can pull a thread and that will mark. It's easier on a calico, is not ideal, but it creates a line. You can see your grain line, and then you could follow that to fold it over and then stitch in. Another way of doing it is you can either make a paper gauge or you can buy these, so it's got different measurements on it, and I could measure from there. Mine's 19 mil, but you could do it at 2 centimeters. You just have a very tiny bit bigger gap. And just measure, and you can put your little mark with your blue pen, and then when that later on, that just disappears when you wet it. So when you're doing an inch one, same thing. So this is 2.5 centimeters. I've done my pre-fold. I can mark it. I want it to be an inch high, so I can mark it at that point. Mark it at that point. Do it on. And then I come machine. And then I can set up, so I've marked with my little gauge here. Put it on the edge. I've lined it up with the groove there. Lined it up with the groove there. And I've got this little gadget, it's a magnet, so I can mark how far I want the pin tuck to come out. So that's given me an inch pin tuck. And then just work your way down. So when you start stitching, you just keep this edge with your mark, whatever you've used to mark it, and you can carry on all the way down. So I've stitched it, I pressed it. Make sure you press it really well, front and back. Make sure it's opened, and I lay that down. So this is an inch deep, and I want my next one to start, but if you go an inch and then 1 notch, so I've marked it here. Depending on how much of a gap, I've done notch there, and a notch there. So I know this is an inch plus a notch, and I need another inch for the other side. So I'm going to go out an inch. And that's going to be my crease. So I'm going to, where them 2 blue dots are, press it, and then I can come lift that out of the way and come and machine it again. So now I've done the second one, I've pressed it and I've laid it down. So you can see you need that little extra notch, otherwise they start overlapping each other. You want them to sit beside each other. So you can just see my green thread. You would normally do it in the same color as your fabric. So it just fits in there, just sits in. So now I can open this up and I can measure. So I can measure from the base of the first one to my fold, which is 2 inches and 2 notches. So that's an 1/8. So 2 1/8, or 54. Or I could measure from here, which is what I've done. So my next one would be from here to here, to that crease. Or if I was doing the 2 from the base, 2 and a bit, and you can see to the crease there. So either way you can measure from the base to the edge or the fold to fold. I can measure from here to here, so it's 3 1/4 inches. So I'm going to turn that one back, that fold, and I'm going to measure 3 1/4 inches, and then do my next one. And then I can pick them 2 points up. You can just see it there. Press it, and then I can machine it again. And then once it's machined, that will lay down. Yeah, so that's how you create them. So decide how deep you want them to be. For your sample, you can do one of each. So 1 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch. Another way you can do it is you can tack the line in if you want to follow and then machine it. But you can make sure when you machine it, you're not catching the tacking line, because sometimes it's really hard to get the tacking line out then. So this is why I prefer to do it like that, do not ironing my edges. And then I've got them done and I can just fold it, set my gauge on my machine and do it really quickly.